What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. It started when an alien device did what it did, but it soon expanded far beyond that, as the character of Ben 10 gained dozens of other transformations beyond just the initial crop. He could be slimy, creepy, fast, and strong, just every shape and size. However, I've always been fascinated by the idea of applying Pokemon characteristics to these aliens, such as types and maybe even moves. And of course, I am not the only person to have done this sort of topic in the past, some relatively recently, so go check out those other videos. I will be linking several of them down in the description as well, but I'm also gonna make him fight the Pokemon. I think this all started when we first saw Forearms as his go-to strong alien, because any kid alive at the time couldn't help but be reminded of Machamp, as they were both machines of pure muscle with 4 arms. So I think if we were going to give Forearms a type, pure fighting would totally fit. We could even ascribe other attributes like abilities and specific attacks, but if they were to fight, it would be fairly evenly matched. However, if we had to pick a winner, I could see the Tetramand just edging out to get victory, even with certain coverage moves, unless of course Machamp could get some no-guard Fisher one-hit KO action going, then he would stand a chance. But if Machamp really wanted to live up to its namesake of champion, he would know that the Ninja Champion is back after 3 long years. One of the most coveted champions in the game has finally returned, and you can get them too by downloading the game Raid Shadow Legends with the link below and enter the code Ninja Returns, and existing players can get the free Ninja Pack in the in-game shop from now until August 20th. Just log in for 5 days and Ninja will be yours. If you stopped playing, now is definitely the time to come back and add Ninja to your collection. Just make sure to use my link or QR code first. But that is far from all. For this month, you can also enter to win real-world prizes like a VR headset, a drone, and more. The way to enter is to use the QR code and record yourself playing. Visit wefinallyplayedit.plarium.com to find out more details. But even if you don't win, you're still entered to receive in-game rewards as well. And as an aside, you don't need to engage in any of the microtransactions to play the game, which I was also concerned about when I was starting, so it is accommodating for all types of players. So if you decide to sign up, you could join me in the Imperials clan today, on top of getting a free starter pack with the epic Orc champion Tagore to use, but you can also get another starter pack once you hit level 15 containing the epic High Elf champion Tyrell. So scan the QR code on screen to collect these rewards and be entered to win fabulous prizes, and you can start playing Raid today. So then of course the first alien we saw, Heat Blast, is deceptively complex for just the simple premise of fire, but the Pyronite can use its powers in a number of creative ways. Of course, pure fire is in order, with plenty of fire-based attacks and a fiery ability, but I'm just saying that you shouldn't count it out as just fire. That being said, I am inclined to put Armarouge as its equivalent, both of them being able to emit massive infernos, and the similar body shape doesn't hurt, but this is honestly one of the hardest matchups out of them all, because Heat Blast can fly and evaporate water and tons of other cool tricks, but Armarouge is also a psychic type, so that does give him a whole different skill set to work with. So I think those mind powers might just be enough to beat Heat Blast in a fight. The next alien from the Omnitrix was Wildmutt, and boy did this guy fall off hard. Almost never used again after the classic series, even though a sort of savage beast that has enhanced senses is a good idea, if a little bit basic as a pure normal type. That being said, I don't know of a Pokemon that's in the exact same blind and feral setup, so instead we'll just go with Zangoose, who's a fairly comparable animal fighter. I think they could go pretty evenly, but when it comes down to it, I do think the Vulpamancer would come out on top, since it has those extra quills on its back and other contributing factors, but it would be a hard-fought victory for sure. Then we have my favorite alien, Diamond Head. The Petrosapien is an obvious rock type, even though we have very few crystalline Pokemon, but given his skill set, it was honestly hard to narrow it down to just 4 attacks and 1 ability, since he can mold his body into different shapes, rapidly shoot out shards, even bend light with refraction. So, because he is such a powerful transformation, I think it's only fair that he go up against Diancie. And despite being a legendary Pokemon, I'm leaning towards a Diamond Head victory. You may disagree, but what could Diancie really do to them? Even if she Mega Evolved, it's not like she could use a giant laser beam against someone that could reflect it right back. And then of course there's the fan favorite Accelerate. who is Speed Incarnate. So that makes the moveset pretty easy, although the surprise dragon typing is unexpectedly fitting. And as the representative of the Speed Force, I think it's only fair to pit him against Deoxys' Speed form. Now, ordinarily the Kinoceleran would trounce anybody since he can basically stop time. However, the legendary Deoxys just so happens to possess the one type that would allow him to know if someone is approaching at high speeds, being able to read Accelerate's mind and react in enough time to counter him. So I legitimately think that this is probably the one Pokemon in the entire roster that could beat this Speed Demon. The next alien we saw was Stinkfly, who is an easy bug and flying type, and its attributes are also just as easy with plenty of alternates waiting in the wings. So to fight this Lepidopteran, I think Scyther is a good Pokemon stand-in. It also has wings that it can use, and its razor-sharp hands are just like Stinkfly's tail. However, I think the giant putrid bug has a leg or two up with its ability to shoot sludge. If Scyther got even a little bit of that on its wings, it would be done, but really I could see it going either way on a good day. Now, I was shocked at how difficult it was to deal with Gray Matter. I mean, I made him a Psychic type because that's where all of the super smart Pokemon are, but the skill set of a Galvan is not well portrayed through Pokemon attacks at all, but I did my best. That being said, I struggled to find an adequate foe for years, until recently when Gimmighoul came out. This tiny gray wanderer seems almost tailor-made to go up against Gray Matter. Even if Psychic is technically weak to Ghost, I do think that Gimmighoul's severely limited move pool, combined with Gray Matter's vast intelligence, would lead the alien to win this round as well. Unfortunately, the next alien was Ripjaws, who almost has it worse than Wildmutt, getting outright replaced numerous times after Classic, but at least a pure water typing is fitting with an easy enough move spread. As for a Pokemon to face, I think Feraligatr is a given. It's the perfect counterpart as another pure water croc, but really is it any contest that the Johto starter would win? I mean, he can at least operate competently on land, unlike the Pisces Valan. After that, we saw Upgrade, who is pretty clearly a steel type, maybe electric if you want, but I think pure steel is fine, sort of like the T-1000. But what Pokemon could possibly measure up to entering and upgrading technology? Well, that pretty clearly sounds like Rotom to me. It works shockingly well as a parallel. However, as close as their traits are, I don't think it's a real competition, with the Galvanic Mechamorph clearly having greater potential and mastery over its powers like its amorphous form, so the Omnitrix seems to be gaining an early lead here. And the last of the original 10 is Ghost Freak. And since the ghost type is in its name, I feel that that's appropriate, along with some rather nasty ethereal moves. As for its matchup, I'll be leaning towards Mega Bayonet. This ghost also has a mean streak, looking to haunt the child that abandoned it with the same vigor that Zeskare has when he goes after Ben. So in his standard form, I think it's arguable that Ghost Freak could lose. However, if the Ectoneurite is able to break out into its enhanced form, even with Bayonet similarly opening up, I do think that Ghost Freak would clearly take it here. But even though that's the end of the original 10, we saw more when Cannonbolt graced our screens and became an instant favorite. And here I would say he's probably a ground type with plenty of ball or rolling moves at his disposal, and for Pokemon, of course I think it's fair to pit him against Donphan, who is the master of rolling Pokemon ever since the first film. But as much as I really love Donphan, the impenetrable shell of the Arborian Pelorota means that Cannonbolt could, if nothing else, outlast the Earthen Elephant with its impressively hard exterior. Then we saw another great addition with Wildvine, who is the most obvious grass type imaginable, with some canonical attacks that line up pretty well with Pokemon moves like Seed Bomb and Frenzy Plant, even pulling out Sleep Powder that one time. That being said, I do think the best opponent could be Carnivine. It's not just because of the head thing, it's also got lots of legs down there too, and while it could probably put up a decent fight against the Florana, I do think that the Omnitrix comes out on top again. Maybe you'd argue that there are better grass types that could be chosen, but Carnivine was the closest in design, and it's not a washout by any means. Then Season 3 had the horror monsters added in, starting with Benwolf, or as it later became known, Blitzwolfer. It's rather basic for my taste, with basic moves, but even a pure dark type can be spruced up with a sonic howl. And as such, I think the best corresponding Pokemon would be the new Okidogi. This Kitakami legendary has a surprisingly similar vibe to the Laboan. However, since we saw so little of Blitzwolfer over the course of the whole franchise, I'm comfortable in saying that Okidogi would win. And not just because it has the fighting type to beat the dark, but that certainly doesn't hurt. And like it, we have Ben Mummy in Classic, or as it's later called, Snarrow, who was so easy to find skills for, and the Ghost and Ground typing is just superb. And what Pokemon with this Tepkoofin face? Well, who else besides Cofagrigus? Surely there's a Mummy in there, given its signature ability that's now shared with this frightful Pharaoh, and its many arms could be able to pretty effectively counter Snarrow's elastic bandages. So I do think that Cofagrigus would be able to take the cake here. Although an argument could be made for Dusclops as the choice, I suppose. And the final member of the trio is Ben Victor, who later became known as Frankenstrike. This is another that shot straight to the top of my ranks, and I can't believe that it took Ben so long to get an electric alien. So Electric and Steel seems appropriate with some cool moves that we know of, like Thunder Punch. So who do we have to fight him? Well, it's not perfect, but I do think that Melmetal would work pretty well, with similar overall body builds, and we know that they can both take and give good strong hits. However, I do think the Transilian's added electrical and even slightly magnetic properties, on top of being able to interface with technology and the sheer strength, simply gives him an edge over just about any foe. So don't feel bad for not winning in this one, Melmetal. Then we ended the season with unlocking Upchuck. Not exactly one of my favorites, but he is powerful and makes a pretty good case for a poison type, and maybe the most perfectly fitting ability and moves. Now, if we're looking for a Pokemon that's a bottomless pit of an eating machine, I think Swalot is a great choice, being able to digest with the best of them, but since Upchuck once ate like a mini sun and burped off Mount Rushmore, I do think that it would probably win out here. There's no shame in losing to that. Next is a fun one. We have Ditto, who is of course a master of Double Team and other double moves, and Pure Normal seems good enough here, but you know that I had to make Ditto face off against Ditto. Maybe that doesn't make the most sense, but there's not really one Pokemon that specializes in duplication, but the Transformation Pokemon kind of does duplicate things. That being said, I do think the one that can turn into anything would beat out the one that has dozens of clones taken out of commission when a single one stubs their toe. That is just too big of a downside to overlook and means that Ditto would definitely beat Ditto. Then we saw the Secret of the Omnitrix movie that had multiple openings, including a special one featuring Eye Guy. This is an odd alien, to say the least, but reportedly his species is able to use their eyes for all sorts of different elemental beams, so I reflected that in the moveset, despite the classic series certainly never showing it. I also opted for normal because I don't really know what else to give him, but I would pit him against the new Bellibolt. That may not be your first choice, and yes, I know that the big spot in the center is not an eye, but neither are the things on the side of its head, so they both delve into eye-related trickery. As for who would win, that's a pretty tall order. It's honestly just kind of a coin flip, but I'm leaning towards Bellibolt. It may be just my lack of familiarity with the Opticoids, but Bellibolt does have the ability that powers up its electricity every time that it takes damage, so I'm inclined to give the edge to this Lightning Toad. And of course, one of the most impressive aliens in the watch, Waybig, is a massive specimen, and as such, I think fighting in steel is appropriate. Fighting for a being of pure muscle, plus it kind of goes with its overall hero inspirations, and it is said to have a sort of metallic skin. And yes, I did give him a Dynamax move just for fun because he's already so big, but speaking of that, I think that realistically, instead of a big Wailord or Steelix, the only thing that could even stand a chance against a hulking force of nature is likely Eternamax Eternatus. This swirling vortex of poisonous dragon energy seems to be Pokemon's best hope at standing up to Waybig's stature. However, I still don't know if that's enough. Toku Stars are like the most durable thing in the universe, and if it is a steel type, it's gonna be immune to the poison and resist dragon anyway. So I respect Eternatus's effort here, but if you're gonna go against Waybig, you need some more muscle on that pile of bones. However, that is not the last of the classic series aliens in the Omnitrix, because we also saw Into the Future, which housed new additions like Arctiguana, a pretty straightforward cold-breathing lizard who would be an ice type. And the first thing that I thought of to face him would be the new frosty lizard pseudo-legendary Baxcalibur. Now with that, it means this Pokemon has quite high base stats, and the dragon attacks to hit on Arctiguana, who's not particularly agile or durable, so I think that we can simply hand it to the Pokemon in this case and move on to the other future alien, Spitter. He would likely be a poison type, but this addition to the watch is also rather basic, with its only powers being shown to spit up excessive amounts of goo. However, given its general pufferfish inspirations, I think the ideal Pokemon matchup would be Overquill. Well, ideal in origins, I guess, perhaps not in skills, because I do think that Overquill is the clear winner. Unless maybe you want to argue that Spitter wins out on land, but Quillfish can still operate there and has at least 2 talents of Poison and Dark, and realistically even more skills beyond that. And the final Omnitrix alien on screen in Classic is Buzzshock, the DNA of another species that we had already seen before. Now, obviously the Megawatts are an easy electric type, however, I do think that Steel is possible given their battery appearances. And maybe this is just cruel, but the closest battery Pokémon that I know of is Charjabug, so that's who I'm pitting them against. While not nearly as helpless as Cocoons in the past, it's still not really gonna have much of a chance against Buzzshock, but I'm still inclined to give it to the Omnitrix here. But those are each of the classic Ben 10 aliens given Pokémon types, abilities, attacks, and how they would fare against their Pocket Monster rivals. I'm not all that surprised that the Omnitrix mostly won out, since the aliens usually fall into the category of either just a one-trick pony or way too overpowered. And you'll see that that's only gonna escalate in the next series with full force. Thanks again to Raid Shadow Legends, and be sure to check out the link in the description below to play today. What Pokemon attributes would you give to the Ben 10 creatures? Which Pokemon would you make them fight? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until we go hero together next time, stay grounded.